So she should have dark brown or black shoulder-length hair, medium build, dark eyes, age from mid to late 30s, height from 162 to 173 centimeters, I thought while filling out the questionnaire. A sense of humor is a must, but intelligence is already clear, I thought, laughing at my joke. Speaking a second language, preferably Spanish or Japanese, and a love for children were very important. I reviewed my answers, tweaked them a little, and submitted the questionnaire. I also added a short paragraph about myself, without mentioning names, and explained why I was doing this. I wasn't looking for a runway model, far from it. I wanted an ordinary woman who would be happy with me and my lifestyle, which includes my 2 children. You see, I love the feeling of being in love, and I really enjoyed being married, just not to the woman I was currently married to. We've lived together for 8 years and won't make it to the 9th. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have married her in the first place. But damn, we had the same arguments even before we got married, although I hoped that over time she would mature and change. Unfortunately, this never happened. Even after having 2 children and countless fights, she still could not see anything wrong with her actions. Heather would just say that's just the way she is, with a nonchalant tone in her voice, and that would be the end of it, but not this time. She crossed the line too many times, and I was done. We didn't get married after high school or college. I wanted to establish myself in business. I wanted to have a stable life before settling down. My 2 best friends in the world went into business with me, and we spent 6 terrible years building our advertising company. We weren't giants, but we had a good customer base and were growing year after year. I met Heather at a friend's party 2 years earlier when our business was just starting to take off, slowly but surely. She was blonde, tall, and very attractive. I'm not a troll, but I don't have the look that makes women lose their heads. Rather, I'm a little above average, and if you don't like me, well, that's your business. I remember in college I once asked the most beautiful girl I had ever seen to dance. I was a freshman, and my 2 friends bet me that I wouldn't dare ask her out. She turned down 99% of the guys who asked her out and just stood there with her group, looking great when I approached her. "Would you like to dance?" I asked, knowing in advance what she would say. She looked down on me and said it wouldn't get better. "Thank God," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "For a moment I thought you would agree, and then I would have to actually dance with you. I only invited you out of politeness, you see, an arrogant, self-centered piece of trash like you probably rarely dances because your head is shoved too deep into your ass, but I decided to ask anyway. However, if you'll excuse me, I need to go to the toilet," I said, walking away from her and her stunning company. Some people started giggling. As you can see, I have no problem calling a spade a spade. Well, not before, not until I met Heather. I guess I didn't notice what she really was like. Getting back to Heather, for some reason she decided to agree to go out with me when I invited her. I wasn't sure why, but I was happy nonetheless. We were busy, so we didn't meet much. Damn, she already had a lot of fans. She was always friendly when we met, and after the 5th year of business our business began to calm down and my thoughts turned back to women. I had a few dollars in my pocket, and for the first time in a long time, I could afford a woman more than just a movie and pizza after that. "Steve, how are you? Still working until midnight?" Heather met me, catching up with me in the shopping center. "There is still work to be done, but we are starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. And how are you? Still at the same accounting firm?" 4 years next week," she said proudly. "Should we go somewhere to eat and chat?" "Of course it would be great. I'll look at my schedule and call you back," I said, astonished by the fact itself. "Great, I'm waiting for your call," she said with a big smile. "Well, I have to go. I have a hair appointment and I don't want to be late." She waved and disappeared in less than 2 minutes. I won't bore you with the details of our dates after that or my clumsy attempts at courting Heather. Let's just say I did my best and had some success. Okay, it was like 7th heaven for me. We dated off and on for 6 months when we decided to become a couple. We've been through a lot together, but she said she wouldn't go all the way with me until she was completely ready. When we celebrated 4 months of our romance, I decided to give her an unforgettable evening. On Saturday, I took her to a fancy restaurant. We took a carriage ride around the lake and ended the evening at a decent nightclub. It was not for teenagers, but for a more mature audience. It was crowded, and I couldn't catch the waitress's eye. "Wait, I'll go to the bar and get us some drinks." "I'll be back soon," I said, making my way through the crowd. It only took me 10 minutes, but when I got back to our table, I noticed she wasn't there. "Maybe she's in the ladies' room," I thought as I sat down and waited. She wasn't hard to spot on the dance floor with her blonde hair. I couldn't believe my eyes, so I stood up to see better. Yes, it was Heather with some very tall guy. They were dancing to some salsa music, and she looked amazing dancing, but too close to him for my comfort. When the dance ended and the slow music started, I assumed she would return to the table, but as they continued dancing, something clicked in me. It took me 3 months to get this close to her. If the music hadn't stopped at that moment, I would have gone over and stopped it myself. She returned to our table with a big smile on her face. "You're back," I said as she picked up her margarita. "It's hot there." She fanned herself with one hand and sipped her drink with the other. "I needed this," she added, putting the glass down. When another guy came up and asked her to dance, she was ready to get up and go with him, but I intervened. "If you go dancing with him again, you'll find another way home tonight." "Steve, it's just a dance. And we're also just on a date, right?" "Steve, you said to yourself that you don't like dancing, but you know how much I like it," she said, standing up. "It's just one dance, and I'll be back in 5 minutes." When she took 2 steps away from the table, I stood up. I abruptly put down my drink, turned around, and started to walk away. I heard her calling me, and by the time I got to the door, I knew she was following me. I gave the valet my receipt and waited. "Steve, what the hell are you doing?" "I'm leaving, don't you see?" "Were you going to leave without saying a word?" "Heather, I told you inside that if you left again, I would leave, and you still went with that guy." "Steve, it was just a dance. What's the problem?" "It doesn't seem like a problem for you," I said as my car pulled up. "Steve, wait. I'll grab my purse and shawl." "I have the best idea. Why don't you stay and have fun dancing with everyone you come across? That way you won't have to worry about me missing you while you're on the dance floor." I got into the car. "Don't call me, I'll call you myself," I shouted through the window to an already furious Heather. I left feeling like Paul Newman in Cool Hand Luke. "We have a misunderstanding here," I remember him saying from the window just before he was shot. Heather and I had the same experience. She didn't call me anymore, and neither did I. I dated others, and although I missed her terribly, I had no intention of being used or humiliated. If she had asked me first, perhaps I wouldn't have minded if she did a couple of quick dances with someone else. But never, I repeat, never a slow dance. There is no way in hell I would allow someone to be that close to my supposed girlfriend. Sandy and I had dinner at Tony's. It was our second date when I heard a familiar voice behind me. I didn't even turn to see whose voice it was. "Good evening, Heather," I said without looking at her. By then, she had already moved to the edge of our table along with her man of the hour. "How are you doing?" "It's just wonderful, now that I'm no longer with an insecure man," she responded. "I'm glad to hear it. But if you'll excuse my manners, Heather, this is Sandy, this is Heather, a girl I used to date." "Steve, we did more than just date." "That's right, we did, until you let your looks and ego get the best of you. But that's all in the past, isn't it? Allow me to introduce myself to your man for tonight. It's not like that unless you're going to leave him for someone better later," I said sarcastically. "Fuck you, Steve." "Right, we never got to that point, did we? I can't say I regret it. Since we broke up, you've probably gone through a dozen boyfriends." I smiled as she turned her back to him and walked away. Her friend hurried after her. "What the hell was that?" Sandy asked. "Remind me not to get on your bad side. What the hell did she do?" "Forcibly dragged you to a group of Hell's Angels." "I really don't want to talk about it, and that's all in the past." "Nonsense. Steve, by the way, the two of you were talking back and forth with each other. Anyone could tell that you both weren't over each other. Everyone can see it except you two. The evening went downhill after that. My brain was throwing out millions of bits of information to process. Steve, when you're done with her, maybe we can try again, or not. I'm not used to being on the sidelines, and I don't like it. She was right. Apparently, I still had something. I mumbled something about calling her, but we both knew that wouldn't happen. I received another kiss and drove away in my car, not knowing where to go. The next week and a half was hard. We were late on 2 projects and had 3 others in the queue. When Ken told me to pull myself together, I knew he was right. I can't get heater out of my head. Steve, listen, call her, buy her dinner, sleep with her, and come back tomorrow with a clear head. I need you 100% so we can finish the rest of the projects on time. So, if you don't mind, let's get back to work. For Ken and Andy, my other partner, talking was easy. Both had fiancés who adored them and were well aware that they were working around the clock to complete the project. All Heather did was complain if she wasn't the center of the universe. But Sandy was right. I still had feelings for her. I was afraid to call and sent her an email instead. I asked if she was busy on Saturday and said I wanted to talk. When she answered and asked if that included dinner, I knew she would. I felt better, and so did Ken and Andy, when I finished my project and helped them both complete theirs. See, we were equal partners, and when we wrote the corporation's bylaws, we made them very strict. Thus, neither of us could sell our shares without the approval of the other two. The majority solved all cases. Each of us had our own specialties. Ken was a fantastic salesman, and Andy was a phenomenal graphic designer. I was able to come up with slogans and put the whole project together, including making sure we made money. We were a good team. Steve, what the hell are we doing here? Heather asked when we finished ordering. Just 2 old friends having dinner together, that's all. Come on. And what kind of email? Were you afraid to call? Afraid I'd say no and bruise your little ego? With these words, I stood up. You're probably right. It was stupid to think that you had changed. I put my napkin back on the table and stood up to leave. You will always be a selfish bitch. You will never think about anyone but yourself. Sit down. It was a stupid fucking joke. Couldn't the girl joke a little to lighten the situation? If it was a joke, it's not funny, and before we clear things up, I have a couple of things I need to say. Can we at least wait until the end of dinner before you start laying out your terms? I'm more than a little hungry, and if this gets too crazy, I don't want to miss out on what should be a great dinner. Why don't we have a couple of drinks, have a quiet dinner, and then deal with this after? She said with a smile that could melt the coldest heart. Okay, truce until dessert. Who said I'll give you dessert? Maybe a kiss, but I didn't say anything about dessert, she replied, taking a sip of wine. It turned out that she didn't mean what I thought about dessert, and her version was much better than mine. Well, isn't this better than screaming and yelling at each other? She asked as we were both lying in bed. Now about those terms and conditions. We resolved most of our differences that weekend. We set boundaries for each of us and developed a safe word when one of us crossed the line. More than once I received a call or email from Heather with one word, chocolate. We both knew what this meant. Gotta go, guys. See you in the morning. Steve, where the hell are you going? We can finish Carter's layout by 9 if we work together, Ken told Andy and me. Andy looked exhausted, and I was only running on 4 cylinders. Heather is waiting for me for dinner, and I would rather see her face than yours over a cold pizza, I replied, putting on my coat. Besides, she has a much better body than you, and I hope to get some before I get too tired. We became a couple again, and 2 months later, she moved in with me. I was still working like crazy, but I believed I was building a future for both of us. It had to pay off in the long run. When I showed Andy and Ken the ring I planned to give to Heather, they were shocked. Look, I have nothing against Heather, and I know you adore her, but have you thought about what would happen if this doesn't work? I gave them a sullen look. Steve, listen to me. If you marry her and it doesn't work out, she can take half of what you have, including the business. We worked too hard for some ex to come along and start causing problems for us. All I ask is that you talk to our lawyer and get his opinion, and if it suits you, go for it with our blessing. You guys need to go out more, you work too much. Now that you've said that, what are you going to do with Anne and Linda? Have you discussed the prenuptial agreement with them? They both said that their fiancés were fine with it, and if I don't believe them, I can ask them myself. Guys, this is so impersonal, and I know it will cause an argument. Steve, wouldn't it be better to find out now before you propose? If you do this later, she will definitely think that you have doubts. Get her consent now, and then propose. This way you will be protected, and it will never come up again. You'll sleep a lot easier knowing you're protected, Andy said. He was wrong. I was a coward when it came to Heather. I controlled every other girl I'd ever dated, but when I looked at her, my knees shook and my brain failed. A week later, after dinner and sex, I raised the question in what seemed like an indirect way. Honey, can I ask you something? I started our conversation. Of course, dear, ask anything, she replied, settling comfortably next to me. Do you trust me? Do you think I'll ever hurt you? No, I hope not. Why do you ask? Have you done something? Now she sat looking at me. No, I didn't do anything. Just thinking about us and our future, that's all. Darling, I think about us every day and how happy I am. You know, I worked hard to make our business grow. I see this as our nest, for our future. You work too much and your partners don't appreciate everything you do for them, she replied, making what I should have asked even more difficult. We each have our own specialty and we work together to get the job done. It's always been like that. But when we formed the company, we put in some bylaws that prevent anyone else from owning shares in the company. This way, only the three of us will ever own the company. What if one of you wants to come out, or what if one of you dies? Then the other two will buy out the third share, and it will remain with the original owners. Steve, what does this have to do with us? I'm getting there, I whispered as sweat began to roll down my back and sides. Would you object to signing a prenuptial agreement? I said, uncertainty, expecting an explosion. So, you're asking me to marry you, right? And you want me to give up my rights to anything and everything, so that when you get tired of me, you can throw me out on the street like garbage. Is this the essence of everything? Heather stood up from the bed, and even in the dim light of the room I could see her blush. I started counting to 5 when it exploded. You pathetic piece of shit, who the hell are you? Look, honey, let me explain, I tried to say before she shot, stabbed, and hung me from the ceiling fan. The last thing I saw was her coming out of the door, which flew out of its hinges when she slammed it. It didn't go well. She disappeared for 3 days. I tried to reach her at work, but she didn't answer my calls. Thank you, guys, I said to my partners on the second day. Heather left me because I brought up that damn prenup, and now she won't even talk to me. Is there anything else you would like me to tell her? I'm sure you can think of a couple more things to make her angrier at me, if that's even possible. Steve, I'm sorry, but how would you feel if she left and you lost half of what you worked so hard to earn? Looks like I knew they were right. It just didn't make it any easier to accept. When I came home that night, she was already waiting for me. Do I look like some money-grabbing bitch? Do you think the only reason I'm with you is because of your money? So what? She shouted at me accusingly. Honey, I'm sorry about the other night. And no, I don't think so. It's just, if we get together and it doesn't work out. I started before she cut me off again. So this gives you everything and gives me nothing. Is that what you're saying? Can you go out to the left and leave me to my fate if I complain? Heather, I would never cheat on you. Oh, now I understand. You think that I am the one who will cheat. That's what it's all about. At least I'm glad I found out in advance what you really think about me. You really are a pathetic worm, aren't you? With these words, she turned her back to me. Now I'm angry. Okay, Miss Arrogance, what would you like to include then? I want to protect my business interests and everything I've accumulated up to this point. But if you have something to offer, it's time to speak up. She stopped and turned around. What if you cheat on me? What if in 10 years you want to replace me with a new and hot model? What will happen then? Well, we can put something in the agreement that will cover that if you're afraid I'll do that. I hate it as much as you do, but if everything is written in black and white, at least we will know the consequences if one of us decides to change. So if you cheat on me, I can have whatever I want. And the same goes for me if you do. She stopped, and I saw the wheels turning in her head. I don't like it, but I understand the reasons. It's like drawing up an impersonal marriage contract. Point 4, condition 3, and so on. Well, at least one good thing came out of all this. She winked at me. What the hell was that? I asked. At least now I know for sure that you want to marry me. And with these words, her frown turned into a smile. Steve, I know you would never try to cheat on me, at least not outside of the bedroom. So, if I have to sign some kind of absurd prenuptial agreement to be with you forever, then I guess so be it. Let's just get this over with so we can get back to our old lives before you get cold feet. I won't freeze, I said decisively. As you say, she snorted. She grabbed my hand and led me to the bedroom. We need to put these last 3 days behind us, and I know of only one way to begin the healing process. I was late for work the next day. It took a couple of weeks to agree on the exact wording. My business and home were out of reach, but whatever we earned in the future was fair game. In the end, if we decide to separate, it will be split 60-40, with me getting 60% since I made more money. However, if one of us cheats, the guilty party will receive, at most, $25,000, and the rest will go to the offended party. The most detailed part concerned what was considered cheating. The definition included not only the physical act, but also the emotional humiliation and insult of the other party. I expanded this to include the impact on my business. Overall, it was detailed, thorough, and best of all, now complete. We both signed it. After the document was notarized, the lawyer kept a copy, and a copy was placed in our safe deposit box at the bank, and I hoped it would be forgotten. That night, we went out to dinner to celebrate. It was like a huge weight being lifted off my shoulders. I sat there looking at her, thinking about how much I loved her and how close I was to losing her. Happy? I asked. Very, she replied, grabbing my hands. You know I love you, don't you? And you know that I'm completely in love with you too, I replied as our eyes looked at each other lovingly. Let's skip dinner and go home. No way in the world, cowboy. I'm hungry and I need a big piece of meat tonight, she said, looking at me. And maybe dinner too. What would you say if I asked you to marry me? You already asked me, don't you remember? I thought that with our conversation about the pre-contract, everything was decided. But I never said those words. Okay, Steve, let's hear them. She set down her glass of wine and folded her arms over her chest. Here, now? Where is even better? At least I will have plenty of witnesses to this momentous event, she laughed nervously. I knew she was only teasing me, knowing that I would never do this in public like in a crowded restaurant. But this time she was wrong. I've been carrying this ring with me for the past month, waiting for the right moment to offer it to her. I stood up, walked over to her, and pulled her to her feet. Steve, you're making me feel shy, she said, looking around as people started looking at us. I got down on one knee and took the ring out of my vest pocket. Heather, I love you more than anyone in the world. You make me happy, and I want to spend my whole life with you. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I said it loud enough for everyone around us to hear. The place became deathly silent. Everyone was looking at us. She looked at the ring and said, yes, quietly. Yes, you crazy fool, I will marry you, she finally shouted out loud. The place erupted with applause. The visitors applauded and shouted congratulations to us. 4 months later, we had a small wedding, and 2 weeks after that I found out she was pregnant with our first child. After Gary Michael was born, she quit her job and became a full-time stay-at-home mom, and when Casey was born, we felt like our family was complete, as she put it. 1 boy, 1 girl, and a house with a white fence. We had everything. We had dinner with my partners and their wives once a month. Both also got married. Every quarter, we held a party for all our clients. It wasn't a big deal, just dinner and drinks to thank them for their continued support. I probably started noticing this shortly after Gary was born, but I didn't pay much attention to it, although I probably should have. When she walked into a room, she wanted everyone to look at her. She began to dress provocatively enough to warrant this. It wasn't that noticeable at first, but then she started going overboard even more before she became pregnant with Casey. This stopped for a while after Casey was born because she spent an insane amount of time dressing our daughter in the frilly outfits she could find. She was my little angel, but for Heather, she was a dress-up doll. At our quarterly event shortly after our 6th anniversary, we had our first serious fight. I interacted with the guests along with my partners, and Heather communicated in her own way. I don't think she was drunk. Maybe she had a little to drink. However, she became too friendly with several men in the crowd. She always loved to dance and was a great dancer, but what she did on the dance floor was more than a little provocative. The worst thing about it was that I wasn't the first to notice. It was Anne, the wife of one of my partners. "Steve, is Heather drunk?" "I don't think so. Why do you ask?" She just turned me towards the dance floor. I didn't know who this guy was with whom she was dancing so openly. When the song ended, I was there. I grabbed her hand and asked her what the hell she was doing. "Steve, I'm dancing with the son of your oldest client. He asked me to dance, and I agreed. What is the problem?" "The problem is that I don't like my wife dancing with another man like that on the dance floor," I replied. "That's how all the young people dance now. It's not a big deal." "This is a big deal to me, and you're not a young kid. You are married and have 2 children." "Steve, I may be older and have 2 kids, but I'm not dead yet," was her response. "I'm not telling you not to have fun, but when my partner's wife tells me what you're doing with some guy on the dance floor, it becomes my business. Think about what my other clients think. They're probably saying how lucky I am to have such a hot wife." She tried to smile. "Not with this group, Heather. These old people wouldn't say nasty things even if they had a mouth full of it. But know that they will reject a contract with us overnight if they think there is something going on that could affect their business." "Okay, I'll calm down, but you really need to relax." It was a long trip home. We were arguing about what behavior was acceptable for the wife of one of the owners. I expressed my opinion, and she just rolled her eyes. After that, it only got worse. At a charity auction 2 months later, she wore a skirt that I thought was too short. I expressed my displeasure, and Heather said she wasn't going to change her clothes. "Steve, if you don't like the way I'm dressed, leave me at home and go yourself. You know I can't do this. They're both waiting for us." I resigned myself, and we went, which I was not very happy about. She managed to walk around the entire room that evening, although I tried to keep her at arm's length. We danced more than half of the dances, and when slow music was playing, she suggested that we go home and make love. I would love to, but now I need to cool down. We still need to stay at the auction. This is a business dinner, not a party for fun, I tried to explain to her. Heather behaved well before the auction began. We won several items that I could use in my work. We were about to leave when a date with one of the attractive bachelors began to be arranged. I was only distracted for a few seconds to find out that she and another woman were actively bidding for this guy. "What the hell are you doing? You are crazy," I quietly shouted at her through clenched teeth, trying to smile. "I'm just raising the price," was her response. "Now think about what you are doing, if it is even possible. My married wife is bargaining for a date with a bachelor. Everyone in the room knows who we are, and it makes it seem like I'm either okay with this or you don't care about our marriage. Either way, you made me feel ashamed. Grab your purse, smile at everyone, because we're getting out of here before you make any more trouble. Is it clear? You don't have to talk to me like that and treat me like a child. Honey, if I don't do this, your little brain won't understand what I'm saying." This was said with the same stupid smile on his face. We finally made it out of the building. The explosion started in the car, and boy, was it a huge explosion. "Steve, I'm not an idiot. I have an MBA and a degree in accounting, she told me. Then use your brain sometimes. You know what they say? If you don't use it, you lose it, I retorted. Keep going, and I know something you won't get to use for a very, very long time. Is this supposed to be some kind of threat? Not a threat, a promise. Poison sprayed from her lips. I was angry, she was angry, and neither of us made concessions or gave up. Needless to say, I didn't get sex that night or anything close to it, and not only that night, but the next, and even after that. Heard your wife almost bought a stallion the other night, Andy tried to joke. Office stuff is one thing, but if she bought it, you'd have to pay for it out of pocket. When he saw that this did not have the expected effect on me, he realized that the joke was a bad one. Steve, it was a joke. It's not funny now, and it wasn't funny that night either. So if you don't mind, let's just forget about it, okay? No problem, I just thought. I stopped him right there. Look, I've had enough of one person who doesn't think before they say or do something stupid. I don't want to worry about you either. Let's just get back to work. Not the best start to Monday. Luckily, work was busy and I could close the door and go about my business without worrying about anyone interrupting me. The atmosphere of the house was chilly to say the least, and if it weren't for our 2 children, I probably would have spent a lot less time there. We slept in the same bed, but there was like a 10-meter barrier between us. God forbid us if we accidentally touched each other. It was as if someone had hit us with a hot fireplace poker. Are you done frowning? Heather asked me after dinner on Friday. If you haven't already, I'm going to go out. I'm tired of getting frostbite since last Saturday. You still don't understand, do you? I said, looking at her. And I'm afraid you'll never understand, I said regretfully, looking away and walking away. Talk to me, okay? Just don't leave me or I'll leave. Was she trying to threaten me? Okay, as you want. Maybe I should have kept her on a shorter leash. Then maybe I could control her more. No, it would never work, not with her. I'm leaving, don't wait for me. She came out wearing a short black leather skirt that hid nothing and a white corset that was unbuttoned almost to her navel. After you leave, where should I send your things? I shouted after her. She glanced at me and walked out the door. I was going to drink myself into unconsciousness, but decided it was better not to. My marriage was dying, and not slowly. She didn't seem to care anymore. Although she was lousy as a wife, Heather was wonderful as a mother, and that was one of the few reasons I continued to tolerate her flippant attitude. She returned home a little before 1 o'clock in the morning. I pretended to be asleep. I was not in the mood to talk. I heard her taking a shower, using an electric toothbrush, and finally saw the lights go out. She climbed into our bed, and instead of staying on her side, she moved closer to me. I know you're not sleeping. Do you want to have fun? I'm hot for you tonight. I rolled over and just looked at her without saying anything for a minute. I guess you had to go out and hang out with other guys to want me, or do you want me to know what it's like to get handouts? Anyway, I lost my temper when you left that night. I took my pillow and lay down on the sofa. Okay, I didn't sleep, but I spent the night sitting on the couch. I was tired of her flirting, dancing, and her attention to every guy who gave her even a drop of attention. I had a streak of jealousy a mile wide, but my sense of ownership began many years ago. She was my wife, no stranger. She married me, which meant to me that she was mine and I was hers. I definitely didn't trust her anymore. If she acted like this when I was around, I couldn't even imagine how she acted when I wasn't around. It was too scary a thought, and I was sad to think that I would probably soon start a new chapter in my life. Around 7 in the morning, I looked up, and there she stood. She was in a robe, leaning against the doorframe with her arms crossed over her chest. We need to talk. I didn't do anything with anyone else last night. I had a few drinks, danced with a few guys, and returned home. This is all. I didn't kiss anyone, no one groped me, and I didn't lie with anyone. You have to believe me. I saw her begging me to believe her. Why should I trust you? I see how you behave with our friends. I can't imagine what you do with strangers. I just don't want to argue about it anymore. You live your life. I will live mine. We will meet from time to time, and life will go on as usual. This way I won't have to worry about you embarrassing me." "Are you giving up? Are you giving in to our marriage?" she screamed. "What marriage? I feel more like your supervisor than your husband. It's like a father trying to preserve his daughter's virginity. He does his best, but in the end, it's up to her to keep her or give her away. You gave away our marriage." "Steve, you're an asshole. I didn't give anything away." "That's right, you didn't give it away. You made me pay for it with your respect and the love I once felt for you again and again, but I have nothing more. Come upstairs and I'll make you feel good, just like old times." "You still can't hear me, can you? I'm done, it's over." She got angry, muttered something under her breath, and left. I thought I could live with her for the sake of our children, but I was wrong. She did everything she could to keep me interested, and although my body almost betrayed me a couple of times, my mind held on. I never told her about the Sunday block party, but somehow she found out. I was looking forward to a nice quiet evening with a few old friends. The last couple of times have been difficult, but this time I won't have to keep an eye on Heather and my guests. "Is your wife coming this evening?" Ken asked me as we stood at the bar. "No, I didn't say a word to her." "Well, looks like today isn't going to be fun," he joked, trying to cheer me up, but it didn't work. The party was in full swing, and we were just sitting down to dinner when I saw her from the corner. Her dress was too revealing. "I was almost late, honey," Heather said, kissing me on the cheek. She grabbed an empty chair, pushing it and herself between me and the person on the right. I looked at her, and she really looked gorgeous in what must have been a new dress. It perfectly emphasized her figure. "Linda told me about the party. It must have slipped your mind." She looked at me. She whispered softly, "You wouldn't want anyone to think there was trouble in heaven, would you?" She smiled at the couple sitting across the table from us. "I thought your wife wouldn't come," Andy reminded me. "You can thank your wife for being here," I told him with disgust. "Hey, it's not her fault that you can't control your wife." I wanted to strangle him right then and there, and I think he knew it as soon as he opened his mouth. Perhaps she will be on her best behavior tonight. You know, he'll try to make amends for his guilt. Heather worked the room as most of the guys tried their best to look like they weren't looking at her top, but of course they were. When the band started playing, she calmly came up and invited me to dance. "Why are you here? Haven't you done enough? Steve, you have two choices. We can be the loving couple we truly are, or I can be the biggest bitch that ever walked the face of this earth. Your choice." "You really are a fool, aren't you? Do you think you can blackmail me into loving you again? You don't respect me, and you probably never did, but I sure as hell don't have to put up with this farce anymore." I left her. I approached Linda first, thanking her for telling Heather about the party, and then I approached the bartender. He gave me a drink, and I handed him $100 bill and told him what I wanted from him. He smiled. I didn't. I returned to my seat. Heather was in fine form this evening, drinking drinks like water and flirting with every guy, single or not. When she got on the dance floor with our client's brother, it got ugly. Many couples left knowing full well what was going to happen. I guess they didn't want to be there when the shit hit the fan. "David, if your brother doesn't remove hands from my wife right now, he will have to examine the inside of the hospital room for a long time. Am I making myself clear?" He looked at me and realized that I was not joking. "Phil, we're leaving now," David said to his brother, and they both looked at me. Phil looked at Heather. He seemed to thank her for the dance and left without a word. This ended the party on a pretty low note. "Ken, Andy, ladies, I'm leaving," I told them. "I might not come to work tomorrow, and maybe the next day too. Looks like I have a personal matter to deal with," I told them. "Steve, maybe if you talk to her," Linda began before I interrupted her. "If Andy saw you acting like that, what would he do?" She didn't have a good answer for that. I approached the bartender. He handed me a branded camera. I gave him another 50 and went home, my house. I don't know what time Heather got home because I didn't hear her. I found her sleeping on the living room couch on my way to the door. First, I went to the bank and emptied our safe. Then I went to the lawyer and gave him the camera and our prenuptial agreement. I told him I wanted a divorce and asked him not to attend the ceremony. I spent the next few hours on the computer moving stocks, bonds, and bank accounts. Credit cards were canceled, reissued in my name only, and I even emailed and notified our children's school that I had started the divorce process so she could not take the children and move away. I made sure my lawyer prepared a court order signed by the judge that stated that I was to be notified immediately if Heather came to the school and tried to take the children. "Where have you been all day long? I called you at work and they said you took the day off," Heather said, watching my reaction. "I'm sorry about last night. Apparently, between my anger and alcohol, I completely disgraced myself. I already apologized to Ken, Andy, and their wives, and I was waiting for you at home to talk to you." "No need. Like I said, I'm done with you. If I wanted to marry a woman of easy virtue, I would choose a better one than you. At least with her, I would know where I stood. But with you, I never knew what to expect until I saw the footage from that night. I had my suspicions, but I never knew how cunning you could be. Thank you for finally putting everything on the shelf." "Steve, you can't mean that. I'm sorry, we can get through this. I know we can." I just shook my head. "Here's a check for $10,000 for legal fees. You will be served the documents on Thursday, and you will see that all of our old accounts and credit cards are now closed. You can stay in the house, just stay away from me. According to our preliminary agreement, we will share custody of the children, and since this house was mine before I met you, they will live here, at least for a while. Let's try to do this as civilized as possible, at least for the sake of the children. Don't even think about taking them and leaving. I have a signed court order that states that I will be notified immediately if you try to pick up children from school for any reason. When you get a lawyer, I will send him a copy of our prenuptial agreement. I wish I could say this is just a business relationship, but it's not. It's personal now. So if you'll excuse me, I need to tell our kids we're getting a divorce and make it as easy as possible for them." I was left stunned by Heather. She found a good lawyer, thinking she would get a lot of money with me. When he saw the agreement, the testimony I had collected from people at various parties, and the recording of her antics at the Sunday party, he had a meeting with her that was an eye-opener. She wasn't happy. The divorce went quickly because everything was clearly agreed upon. I don't know if she hated me, but she had to because my lawyer was merciless. Heather found herself in a one-room apartment with her jewelry, clothes, car, and a lot of money that would not last forever. I allowed her to see the children in the house, but I was always there. She got a part-time job as an accountant, and I heard that she also did some freelancing. I felt pretty good for the next 3 months. My children were with me because Heather could not support them. She saw them a couple of times a week. She was even allowed to visit them on weekends in her apartment. I tried not to interfere when she came to pick them up. I didn't have to see her if I didn't want to. I wasn't dating anyone other than I just didn't want to. We were busy and started to attract a lot of new clients. Then I was set up. "No, no, no, I don't agree with this," I shouted at both of them. "Why the hell would I agree to something like that? You know what she's like. Listen, Anne says she needs the money after your divorce, and this way we won't have to worry about our events. She will organize everything, send out invitations, and take care of food and drinks. All we need is to just come there and enjoy." They persuaded me. I objected, but they convinced me. I wasn't going to go, but it wouldn't be right from a business perspective. So I resigned myself and went. "Good evening, Steve." "Heather," I nodded in response. "I have everything under control. Relax and pretend I'm not here." "Yes, sure." It turns out I was wrong. Everything went well, and it was probably the best party we've ever had. At least that's what our clients said. We got some new contracts, and Ken and Andy were sure it was because of the party. We need to hold them every 2 months and invite potential clients. We could set up a meeting room and, they assured me, that way we might be able to attract even more business. I was against it, but once again I found myself in the minority. I didn't like where this was going. Under Heather's leadership, the parties continued and expanded. She became the hostess and now communicated openly with our guests. She became more than friendly with several of our clients, and if I didn't know better, I would have thought there was something going on behind the scenes. When Heather started bringing in women to serve drinks, I shuddered. They looked and behaved like women of easy virtue. When one or two started disappearing with clients upstairs, I tried to intervene. Guys, what are we doing? You may get one or two clients, but our old clients won't wait for something to happen. They care about their reputation. Steve, we're getting more business than we can handle. Relax and go with the flow, Ken told me, looking at one of the girls. The guys can stay if they want, but I'm leaving. I don't want anything to do with this. I was heading out the door when Heather approached me. Already leaving? The party is just getting started. Did you ever really love me, or was it just a game on your part? I really loved you, but you became so terribly boring. I was like a wild horse that wanted to run. You kept trying to keep me in the stall. By the way, I didn't cheat on you until that night. I guess I thought you were my white knight and would fight for me, but you never did. Be realistic. Why would I fight for someone who went out of his way to act like a prostitute and embarrass me? It sounds like you provide more to our clients than you have provided to me in the last 6 months of our marriage. When I pay a woman of easy virtue, I expect her to behave accordingly. I left her with her mouth open and maintained my dignity. After that night, I stopped going to company parties. Mr. Collins, I said, standing up from the table and pulling out the chair for him. I didn't expect you until tomorrow. Steve, I never like to put off bad news. I changed my schedule so we could meet this morning. Sit down, let's talk. Would you like something to eat or drink? I asked. Nothing, thank you, I won't stay long, he said, crossing his legs. Steve, I like you, and it pains me to tell you that I'm taking my business. A group of 7 people doesn't approve of the direction your firm is heading in, and we can't afford to be around if and when something ends up happening. I don't understand. Is this something we did? And if so, give us a chance to correct the mistake, I begged him. Steve, I have always appreciated you, and you have never misled me, but your 2 partners are leading your firm down a shaky path. Can I ask you a personal question? Of course, please ask, I replied. I didn't see you at the last games. May I ask why you weren't there? It's quite a personal matter. You mean your ex-wife is recruiting girls for your new clients? Steve, one of them even had the courage to ask me if I wanted to go upstairs. As I said, we do not approve of the direction your company is heading in, and we are considering other options. Think fast, my brain screamed out loud. What if I can guarantee you that in less than 30 days our company will make a complete 180-degree turnaround? What if I told you that if this doesn't happen, I'll start my own company? Look, it's only 30 days, and if I'm wrong, what do you have to lose? Give me 1 month to prove this to you. I saw the wheels turning in his head. Okay, 30 days and not a day more. 30 days from this day, I will be here again to either shake your hand or pick up my business. Agreed. Thank you. I promise you I won't disappoint. I knew I had to quickly fix this hellish situation. Andy and Ken arrived late, as usual. Guys, we have a big problem. Some of our clients are going to leave. Damn it, he was with his wife. I told them we will fix it, but we only have 30 days. I need your help. What's the phrase? Deaf, stupid, blind, and stupid. That's who they were. They liked the party the way it was, and if some of the old guys didn't like it, they didn't care. Look, Steve, we have contracts with all of them. They can't just walk away without paying a huge termination fee, and they won't do it. You worry too much, they told me. To hell with them, I thought. I'm not going down without a fight. I took the phone. I set the meeting up for lunch instead of dinner because I didn't want anyone to know about it. Glad you both could come, I said to Anne and Linda. Why so secret, Steve? Asked Anne. Or should I say we, have a big problem. I then explained to them about my meeting with Mr. Collins and the conversation with their husbands yesterday. If I have to, I will start my own business. I worked too hard to build this business and see it destroyed because of my ex-wife and a couple of easy women. What kind of women of easy virtue? Anne perked up, straightening up in her chair. You haven't been to a party for the last 6 months. All these women serving drinks and snacks are Heather's hires. She told us they were former models, Linda added. More likely former models. They take potential clients to the top and offer them a small incentive to sign a contract. Our husbands would never agree to this, they both insisted. Are you going to the party on Saturday? I asked. Actually, no, they've become more like college parties than business events, Anne said, looking at Linda for confirmation. Now, a very personal question. Were your prenuptial agreements the same as Heather and I? Steve, after we saw what Heather signed, we told our husbands that there was no way in hell we would sign that, and we didn't. I was amazed. You didn't sign anything. Just our marriage certificate, Linda said with a smile. My thoughts were spinning wildly. Can we meet on Sunday at my house, say at 10:30? For what? Asked Anne. I want to show you what really happens at these parties. I have a friend who will film everything. We can watch it together. Steve, isn't this a little sneaky? Anne felt uncomfortable. The question is, do you trust your husbands? I just want to put an end to what I think is going on, that's all. I'm sorry if I don't sound very sympathetic or concerned about Andy or Ken. This is my, and probably, your livelihood too. Well, I will do this with or without your consent. I just wanted you to know in advance. You can warn your husbands or leave it as is, it's your choice. Steve, are you really going to start your own business? Linda asked, seeming really worried. I wouldn't want it, but if I have to, then yes. Why don't we wait until Sunday? Perhaps their opinion will change after our conversation, and if not, well, then so be it. Since our company was paying for the rooms, the hotel had no problem getting my person to prepare everything in advance on Saturday morning. I told him I wanted video and audio in the dining room and both reception rooms. John, when everyone leaves on Saturday night, I want you to put away all the cameras and give me the CDS. I don't want to leave any traces that could come up and hurt me, okay? At least now I could confirm what I had heard or prove to my clients that they were wrong, even though I didn't think they were wrong. John brought everything just after 2 o'clock the next morning. Cameras, discs, and microphones, everything was in place. He left with a check for $700 in his pocket, and I went to bed. I wanted to look at one of the discs, but decided that it would be better to sleep because I didn't know what would happen next. Anne and Linda came to my house together. They had a bag of donuts and coffee from Starbucks. Turns out I didn't have to cook breakfast. Have you watched the disc yet? Anne asked, pouring herself some coffee and taking a donut. No, but I already put it in the DVD player. Well, let's see what we have, Linda purred as she finished her donut. It all started innocently enough. Maybe I was wrong, I told them. I then saw Heather look around and briefly leave the room. I switched to another DVD in time to see her enter one of the adjacent rooms and lock the door as she began to undress. She still looked good. The door opened and Ken walked in. Let's just say he didn't come for drinks and snacks. No, please no, Anne said, looking at what they were doing. We watched most of the video, and I thought Ken was the only jerk until I saw Andy walk into one of the rooms with one of the women. Heather slept with 2 other men that night, and both ladies said they never thought she could be like this. And to think, we sympathized with her so much that we forced our husbands to hire her to organize these parties. Sorry again, Steve. There were a lot of sorries. It's okay, you didn't know, and to be honest, I didn't know either. But now I know. If you don't want to watch any further, I'd like to turn this crap off. I pressed the stop button. That asshole is dead by the time I get home, Anne said, seething with anger. I don't even want to see him, Linda screamed. I'm going to call him and tell him to pick up his things. I let them talk for a few more minutes before speaking. Ladies, I said as 2 angry women looked at me. Whether you like it or not, we still need them. For what? Anne screamed. Their work. They are both very good at what they do when they are at work. Now, if the company is to survive, we will need their help. Both women sat down, but were far from calm. I have a proposal for both of you that will give you the revenge you want on your husbands and still keep the company intact. I got their attention. I spent the next 2 hours laying out my plan. They didn't like everything, but they agreed with most of my suggestions. I called our corporate attorney, and within 3 hours our agreement was signed, certified, and recorded. Please don't freak out until the papers are filed in court Monday morning, I pleaded with them. By Tuesday, you'll have an advantage, and after that, I don't care what you do. And really, I didn't care. My ex-best friends set me up, especially Ken, and they'll get what they deserve. Monday was a typical Monday. We had a lot of work to do. After my morning meeting, I walked into my office, closed the door, and called my ex-wife. Heather, I need to meet you at my house tonight. My mom has the kids, so no one will disturb us. Steve, do you need me to wear anything special? She said in her sexiest voice. No, wear whatever you want. You are a cunning one. I knew you couldn't stay away from me. I'll be with you at 7, dear. I probably shouldn't have played along with her, but I couldn't resist. I wouldn't touch her, I thought to myself, but I felt like I had to warn her because, when it comes down to it, she's still the mother of my children, but thank God she's no longer my wife. I left the front door open, and just before family she came in, putting on a long coat. When Heather opened it, she was completely naked. I thought this would save time on undressing, at least on my part, she said, shedding her coat. I handed her a glass of wine and clinked it with her. To one once great marriage, I said, emptying my glass as a puzzled Heather looked at me. Take a seat because you're going to want to hear what I'm about to tell you. Steve, we can talk later. Now we need all our energy to reconnect with each other. Is that what you told Ken too? And the 2 other guys at last Saturday's party? I turned on the DVD player. I fast-forwarded to the part where she and Ken had sex. Turn it off, please turn it off, she screamed over the recording. It was a stupid mistake. He told me that if I didn't sleep with him, he would kick me out. I had no choice. What about the other guys? You can't say that each of them threatened you. Heather, stop lying. Her face became gloomy. What about the other 2 guys? She had no answer to this. The parties ended last Saturday. No more parties, no more messing around, no more Ken and Andy. But they still owe me for Saturday. I pulled out a wad of money from my pocket. I expect $300 for a trick. This should cover you and other women of easy virtue. I handed her the money. If I were a real asshole, I would turn this tape over to the authorities, but you are still the mother of our children, and I will not take them to jail to see you. Steve, I'm sorry. I needed money to live. I think you'll have to find another way to make money. Tomorrow the wrath of God will fall on Andy and Ken, and it won't be very nice. I suggest you get out of town for a couple of weeks. Maybe you can visit your mother out of state until this dies down, and I won't stop you from seeing children, and I will not tell them what you have become. It's between you and your conscience. However, until you get over it, you can only see them in this house. You can't take them. Somewhere on your own, and no night visits. Do we have clarity on this issue? I'm just sorry it ended like this. I thought we had a pretty good marriage, but I think you wanted more than I was willing to give. For a minute, I thought she was going to beg us again to give us another try, and if I hadn't seen the tape, I might have thought about it, but not now. Hell, there was no way I could get back with her, even though I still loved her. We talked and made plans for the future, and an hour later she left. She kissed me on the cheek and told me if I ever needed a stress reliever to call her. This will never happen as long as I have 2 perfectly good hands. Anne divorced Ken, and for some reason Linda decided to try to make things right with Andy, although I still wouldn't want to be in his place. You see, each of the women received 50% of their husband's shares in our company. With these shares, Linda, Anne, and I now had a controlling interest in the company. Andy and Ken were told that they would still be able to keep their jobs, but they would only be paid for what they did for the company in the future. They weren't happy about it, but something about alimony payments and a possible looming divorce kept them working. We have made the necessary changes to bring our company back to respectability, and although we have lost a few clients, we have maintained a stable client base. Now it's just Linda, Anne, and me at the monthly meetings. Next year, we plan to expand our staff and bring in some new graphic designers, but that will be our decision. I see Heather once every 2 weeks and have no idea what's going on in her life, and I don't care anymore. There are many mentions in my personality profile, and I have even met many of them. One young lady caught my attention. Her name is Kaik, and she lives in Japan. She is a single mother and is planning a trip to the United States next month. We talked on video through the computer, and she seemed nice enough, but was concerned about what she had heard about disrespectful Americans and asked me point blank why my wife and I separated. When I told her about this, she smiled and said that she was looking forward to meeting me. Could she be the one? Time will show. But as I said at the beginning, I loved being in love, and someday I will get married again. I just hope she doesn't have a problem signing a prenuptial agreement like Heather did. I'm not going to take any chances, and neither are Anne and Linda. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.